It's always a good idea to write documentation for your functions and classes and modules. And we're going to do that in this video by taking advantage of a Python feature called docstrings. And personally, I think this is one of the great underappreciated features of Python. The documentation for your program's code is directly available as your program is being run. So let's take a look at an example. I'm going to bring up the terminal. And what I'm going to do is fire up the Python interpreter, put it into interpreter mode. And then I'm going to look at the documentation for the stir function, which creates a new string. And to do that, all I have to do is print, and I'm going to use the stir function and then type dot, and then double underscore, doc, and then double underscore. And when I do that, you can see that I get documentation right here for the string function. As I mentioned, this works for more than just functions. It also works for classes and modules. So let's import the collections module. And now let's print out the documentation for the collections module. And I'm going to do the same thing, dot, underscore, underscore, doc. And you can see that this is a little more involved than just one function. This prints out a documentation string for the entire module, which describes the different classes that are available within that module. Now, what's really nice about this feature is that I can interactively learn about various Python APIs as I need to know them without having to resort to cumbersome documentation. It's also an easy standard for other developers to follow when they create their own packages and code. So to do this for your own functions and other code, all you need to do is define a literal string at the top of a function or class or module. So let's try it out. We're going to go into docstring start. And here I have a function that takes a couple of arguments, right, and just prints them out. Nothing really fancy. So to create a docstring for this function, all I need to do is at the top of the function is put in a triple quoted string. And then inside the triple quoted string, I'm just going to explain my function, and it takes arg1, arg2, which defaults to none. And it, doesn't really do anything. And then I'm going to list the parameters. And I'll say, arg1 is the first argument. And arg2 is the second argument. Okay, well, you get the idea, right? So just make a triple quoted string at the top of your function. And then down here in the code, I'm just going to print out my function. And then here's the double underscore doc. So let's go ahead and run this. So let's bring up the terminal. And inside chapter 2, we're going to run. And you can see it works. Let's take a look at some of the best practices for writing good documentation strings. So first, docstrings should always be enclosed in triple quotes, even if they're only one line. This makes it easy to expand on them later. The first line of your docstring should summarize the function or the class or the module and what its main purpose is. For packages and modules, list the important classes and submodules that are contained within it, along with any custom exceptions that the developer needs to know about. For classes, list the important methods along with important information like any enums or static member functions or properties. For functions, there's a variety of important things to list. First, make sure your docstring lists and explains each of the parameters, including the optional ones. If the function returns a value, list it, right? Explain it. If there's no return value, the usual convention is to save space by not listing one instead of saying, explicitly, hey, there's no return value. If the function raises any exceptions, make sure you list those also. If you want to learn more about how docstrings work and some of the best practices you can follow, then check out PEP 257, which you can find at this link and explains all about docstrings, why they exist, and how to make them work really well.